The new monarchies, the dynastic struggles. The formation of large states throughout Europe led inevitably to conflicts among them. Long chains of marriages among the families of the European princes meant that sooner or later the larger powers would lay claim to the same inheritances and test the matter by force. Personality played a massive part. The three most consistent protagonists, Charles V, Francis I of France, and Henry VIII of England, were similar in age and outlook. The three were self-consciously rivals, each jealous of the other's successes, each triumphant in the other's failures. As the three monarchs aged together, their youthful wars of conquest matured into strategic warfare designed to maintain a continental balance of power. The struggle for supremacy in Europe in the first half of the 16th century pitted the French House of Valois against the Spanish and Austrian estates of the Habsburgs. Nonetheless, the wars took place in Italy. Francis was initially angry at the Spanish for their conquest of the independent by French-speaking kingdom of Navarre on the Pyrenees. Charles, on the other hand, was the direct heir of the Dukes of Burgundy, which Francis flaunted. Competition between Charles and Francis became even more ferocious when the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I, Charles's grandfather, died in 1519. For nearly a century, the Holy Roman Emperor had come from the Habsburgs, and there was little reason to believe that the German princes would not elect Charles V, the now rightful ruler in Austria. Nevertheless, the electors were willing to be bribed by French agents who supported Francis's candidacy, and even by the English who supported Henry VIII. Charles spent the most of all, and his eventual election not only aggravated the hatred between the monarchs, but added a source of conflict. When Charles V was elected, Francis I moved to Milan, strategically key for Charles V, in that it linked his Austrian and Burgundian possessions. With the showdown imminent, both Francis and Charles looked to enlist Henry VIII, who longed to reconquer France and relive the glory of the early English successes of the Hundred Years' War. He was also flattered to find himself the object of great attention by the Valois and the Habsburgs. Charles V himself made two separate trips to London, while Henry crossed the Channel in 1520 to meet Francis I in one of the gaudiest displays of French pageantry, the Field of the Cloth of Gold. While meeting, Henry lost to Francis in a wrestling match, turning the whole event sour, and an alliance with England and the Holy Roman Emperor resulted. English and Burgundian forces would attack northern France, while Spanish and German troops would try to dislodge the French from Milan. In 1523, Charles's forces gained a foothold in Milan. 2 years later, Francis was ready to strike back. Instead, a large imperial army smashed the French at Pavia. Francis himself was captured. Charles V seemingly became the master of all of Europe. His ally, Henry VIII, urged an immediate invasion of France. Charles's position, however, was much less secure than expected. The Ottomans, under the rule of Suleiman the Magnificent, threatened him on the east, and the Protestants were rebelling in Germany. He simply could not throw the dice in France. His hope now was to reach a peace with Francis I, who he kept in captivity in Madrid. This is where it becomes very doubtful if an agreement can ever be met. Francis's own personal humiliation was too strong. Plus, Charles V demanded that Burgundy be returned to him. By the Treaty of Madrid in 1526, Francis yielded Burgundy and recognized Spanish rule in Navarre and Naples. The agreement was sealed by the marriage of Francis to Charles's sister, Eleanor of Portugal. This still was insufficient. To secure his release, Francis was required to leave behind his 7- and 8-year-old sons until the treaty was fulfilled. They remained in captivity for 3 years. No sooner had he set foot upon French soil than Francis renounced the treaty, despite the threat that it posed to his children. Setting France on war footing, he began seeking new allies. Henry VIII, disappointed with the meager spoils, switched sides. So too did a number of Italian city-states, including the Pope in Rome. Most importantly and shockingly, Francis entered into an alliance with the Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent. whose armies were pressing in the southeastern borders of the Holy Roman Empire. In 1526, the Ottomans had smashed the Hungarians at Mohacs, captured Budapest, and threatened Vienna itself. Almost overnight, Charles V had been turned from the hunter into the hunted. The Ottoman threat demanded immediate attention. The French and English were preparing to strike in the Low Countries, and the Italian wars raged on. In 1527, Charles's imperial army in Europe, partly from being unpaid, sacked Rome and captured the Pope. Christian Europe was mortified. The wars, which raged on for 30 years, devastated Europe. Financially, for all nations, they were catastrophic. Finally, in 1559, Francis's son, Henry II, who never forgave his father for abandoning him in Spain, met the son of Charles V, who was Philip II, to sign the Treaty of Cateau Cambresis. Henry II celebrated his victory and had an enormous feast in the tournament. Henry II entered the jousting tournament himself, where he was killed in a freak accident.